Kongversation. So I finally freed myself from the wreckage of that flying saucer. And hey, it turns out I crashed at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Right into this White House.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Chad McCanna.
And I'm Hyle Russell.
I can't imagine what's going to happen next in that saga.
I can't wait. How are you doing, Chad?
I'm okay. Yeah, a little low energy, but what else is new?
Well, that's because you are part of the Bush family dynasty. So, you want to get your genes checked out there because I think you've got chronic low energy.
Might have. That's why I'll never be a winner.
No. It's something Katrina 9/11 Iraq.
I like that. It's efficient. We've got all the political talk out of the way, so nobody turns off the
That's right, yeah. I like that if we had a political show, we could just have it be like 20 seconds where we're just blah, 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 talking points, done. I am kind of riddled with anxiety right now, Chad.
Oh, riddled. Okay. Well, riddle me why you're riddled with anxiety.
Well, I don't know. I've got like a lot of stress in my life right now. I've got it's tax season, first of all. I mean, I don't want to be audited by the IRS.
Don't get me started about tax season, Hyle. I'll launch into my Type 5.
I've also got a wedding coming up this summer. E3 season's upon us.
Oh, okay. Come on. I'm playing the tiny violin with the wedding thing. I mean, there's people complain about the wedding setup, but really, once you get all the pieces in place, you can kind of set it and forget it for a few months. Do you not have the pieces in place? Come on, you've got Gandalf officiating, you've got Diddy on the invitations. What else do you really need in a modern wedding?
I had to actually finish the invitations this week. Let's see.
I still have not been invited.
Yeah, that is true. Nobody's been invited yet.
Well, I won't take it personally.
Got to get, my passport in order for the Caribbean. Got some stuff potentially I can't talk about. It's a stressful time to be one Hyle Russell, and I literally woke up from a nightmare the other day, and I felt like I was having a heart attack because my anxiety is so boiling over right now that a simple nightmare was enough to cause me to have a full-fledged panic attack in my sleep. I woke up from that and I thought I was literally having a heart attack. I was drenched in sweat. I collapsed to the floor. Good times. So you might say, no,
go ahead.
You might say, I am praying for the sweet embrace of death.
Ooh, well, that would be a fantastic segue if we didn't have due diligence to get through.
Oh, God, I just want to die. Why do we have more work to get through?
Actually, maybe it is a good segue into due diligence. So we are all over social media. Check DK Vine out on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube, which is apparently social media these days, because there's a robust and well-informed comment system there.
Actually, our YouTube comments are pretty neat, pretty swell. I can see why Joe likes to read them. They're not really, granted, we don't get too many YouTube comments, but what we do get, it's nice. Except for the one person who critiqued our show the other week. We did the NX controller hoax episode, and somebody was not a fan of our comedic stylings. So,
what did they call us? Tryhards? Because that's my favorite insult on the internet these days. Quit trying to do things. Why don't you just lay back like a lazy asshole and poke holes in everything? That's what the internet's all about. Quit trying, you tryhard.
Now, actually, let me read this comment to you, since Joe is being a lazy Welshman and he's not around to read it for us. All right, let me pull it up here on YouTube, of course. Granted, you can listen to the conversation on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher if you're a weirdo.
We are on Stitcher, though, for those 5 people out there that enjoy Stitcher. Android users mostly.
I don't see the comment anymore. Did somebody delete it?
They might have. Maybe it was you in like a post-nightmare fugue state.
I mean, it's possible. I have no control over what I do in a nightmare fugue state, and I'll keep repeating that to the police. Yeah, I don't see it anymore. Okay, well, somebody on our behalf deleted the comment.
This is brilliant.
But I will have you know that it was very scathing, and it made me feel bad about myself.
Oh my God! Well, I wish that I was here to. I was able to shoulder the burden of that scathing remark with you, but I hope you're able to cope.
Anyway, yes, YouTube's great for social media.
Yep. We also have a giant forum at dkvine.com/forum, and from what I've been told, there's never been a better time to join. The forum community is always bustling. It's a cool place because everyone there has an intensely deep knowledge of the expanded Donkey Kong universe, which involves games like Banjo-Kazooie, Conker, some of the Star Fox series that branched out of what became Star Fox Adventures.
The Star Fox games nobody likes except us. Right.
That's us, yeah. But so basically, if you just are kind of coming to this show in passing, you just have a casual awareness, but you want to know how deep the rabbit hole goes. If you have a strange, somewhat nerdy question, join the forum, pose the question, and I guarantee we will answer in earnest and in a very and in earnest goes to camp. We'll be extremely polite and thorough. The example that I'm thinking of.
I was going to say we'll finish our statement by saying, you know what I mean.
Yes,
and then we'll make sure to replace Santa Claus. Which is what Ernest does.
That's right. That did happen. Yeah, he also accidentally was electrocuted by his doppelganger. He sang a ballad to a turtle.
He believed he was his doppelganger, and he got sent to the electric chair. But luckily, it gave him superpowers, which is why they got rid of the electric chair and went to the gas chamber, and then went to lethal injection. And now I've gone back to the gas chamber now that they can't get the drugs to do lethal injections anymore. Isn't America's penal system great?
Jim Varney just doesn't get enough credit for that. I think that should be his legacy, not Slinky Dog. Yeah. So, by the way, the guy who did Slinky Dog in Toy Story 3 was pretty good.
Was he Jim Varney's doppelganger?
Vocally, he was. It was that guy he used to be Tim Allen's friend on Home Improvement.
Oh,
you know the one I'm talking about? That really big guy? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he would have died by a heart attack by now. It's surprising he's still alive.
No, believe it or not, lung cancer trumps heart attack, as far as Slinky Dog is concerned. So, what are we talking about? We have a hotline you can call if you want to ask us anything. It's 1-281-410-KONG, which is 5664 on touch-tone devices. Skype is running deals now where you can call landline phones from Skype for free and or cheap. So if you're holding out because it's a long-distance call, look into Skype. Maybe you can just give us a ring pretty easily that way. I know a number of people have been doing that, like the Beach House Gang.
And don't forget to support DK Vine on Patreon. Every little bit helps us run DK Vine and make it a more efficient experience for you and your loved ones.
and what you want in your online entertainment is efficiency.
Well, hey, look, it really, every cent goes towards DK Vine. It's not like we're buying yachts with your money. Now, granted, if we get enough of your money, we'll buy yachts, but that's way down the line. Right now, everything is not towards our lifestyle or even groceries, but it's for DK Vine itself. It's to make it a better, bigger, bolder website.
We are going to wind up in the red again this year, thanks to the likes of E3, but what you do by donating to the Patreon helps us be slightly less red, so we do appreciate that.
We're going to be in the pink. We're going to be in the pink this year.
Well, the opposite of red is black. When you're in the black, it's good. So we'll be in like we'll be in the dark red. We'll be like a burgundy, I think, is what we'll be.
Oh, I thought it was 2 in the pink, and then okay. Sorry.
So what are we talking about this week, Hyle?
I'm talking about death, Chad.
What a cheerful topic.
Well, to be fair, we're talking about life after death. So slightly less morbid, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's much more interesting than death itself. I mean, death is the great equalizer, but I think the afterlife might have a way of setting apart those who did and did not live a worthwhile life. But perhaps we'll get to some of the criteria of the afterlife later.
I believe it was Rob Butler who called in some time ago and asked us what happens when you die.
Oh, did he?
Do you remember that? You remember that phone call where it was like very despondent, and he wanted to know like the meaning of life or what happens after you die or something. So, Rob, this episode's for you.
This bud's for you, Rob. We're cracking it open and trying not to vomit while drinking it.
Yeah, who drinks Bud? Like, seriously?
The people in Budweiser advertisements.
Well, they're paid to do it. I mean, if I was paid to do it, I would drink Bud. But yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a beer
snob.
Bud's
for me.
I look. I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer to be a beer snob.
Yeah. So I think that there are a lot of inconsistencies, at least on the surface, with the way that the afterlife is depicted in the Donkey Kong universe. There are agents of death. There are characters that just die and never come back. There are characters that seem to have been resurrected. There are some who come back through perfectly reasonable natural processes that we encounter on a daily basis here, George and Mildred. And there are characters that seem to come back through supernatural means. But you know, because the series have kind of bifurcated once Rare was bought by Microsoft, it might seem like there's no consistency between them, but the mission statement of this episode, I think, is to try and reconcile a lot of these into one cohesive afterlife experience. Because really, that's the mission statement of DK Vine. You know, we have to consider that all of these games take place in a shared reality.
Well, okay, but you think it's inconsistent. I think it's perfectly consistent. I think...
No. I think on the surface it appears inconsistent, but we will prove it to not be that.
Okay, but I mean, granted, in our world, there's no concrete proof of any life after death, but there are beliefs, and there are a wide variety of beliefs. So, you know, it's on the surface level, it could be said the same thing about our reality, that we live in a shared universe, yet it's messy, yet it seems to be inconsistent. So, you know, same thing goes for the DKU, but the difference is in the DKU, we definitely know there's something after death. So
how does our world seem inconsistent in the way that death occurs?
Not how death occurs, but in the beliefs of the afterlife.
But those are like, you know, religious and spiritual beliefs. I mean, in the Donkey Kong universe, we have actual documented proof that there is some state of being after death. Yes,
there is. I'm just saying any like surface inconsistencies could be said the same thing about the major world religions, which is where much of the doctrine about life after death comes from in our reality. So
I gotcha.
I'm just saying, you know, maybe in the DKU, those inconsistencies are actually baked into the fabric of reality. So we'll get into that though.
Okay. Oh, so you're thinking like the followers of Jiggy Wiggy might not necessarily be expecting the same post-life experience as the Kongs per se,
or maybe they perceive it in a different way. I don't know.
And through the veneer of the television screen, we the audience are perceiving it from the perspective of those experiencing it.
I don't know. I just know for certain we're going to get into Lost spoilers in this episode. So if you haven't finished Lost, maybe you should not listen to this particular episode.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, they're all alive.
Okay, so where do you want to begin, Chad? Because, I mean, do you want to start chronologically? Do you want to just, like, dive into the most well-known cases of life after death in a DKU? Help me out here.
Well, I mean, we could go chronologically, but, because that's the way that, you and I sort of had to build our own mental image of what the afterlife in the DKU is, and mind you, that is something that we both did independently. It's just like, well, I got to figure this out. Here's another piece of the puzzle. Let me cobble that onto my own mental model. But no, I think that let's try and walk through the process itself, okay? And I think that the cleanest example, the best documented one, is Conquer the Squirrel.
Conquer the Squirrel, really? Because
yeah.
Okay, I was going to say Bottles because we actually saw that from the side of the living as it happened. But
well, we saw Conquer from the side of the living too.
Well, no, we saw Conquer die and then cross over. By that point,
right.
He wasn't living. But okay, so we'll start with Conquer. Sure, why not?
All right. So yeah, obviously Conquer. There are these documented special cases. So Conquer dies at some point in your adventure.
Mamie, I think you can play through the whole game without dying, right?
Well, no, because whenever you encounter Greg at nighttime when he's trying to kill a catfish, he treats Conquer as if, it's you again. So, why don't you piss off? But in order for that to happen, you have to have met him at some point. I think it was Cameron on the DK Vine staff who actually did this on Rare Replay. I might be off there. Someone did it. It's a very difficult feat to actually play through Conquer's Bad Fur Day up to the nighttime portion without dying. If you do that, I believe that the bit where you're riding Mr. Barrel down and you crash into the wall, that kills you if you have not died already.
See, I thought that you just didn't see the scene of him meeting Greg.
No, I think they actually worked that into they coded a scenario in which you would be forced to see that cutscene. Well, I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
See, I'm pretty sure Greg, his dialogue is unchanged because they just assumed the player would have died before then, but you never see the scene of him dying and originally meeting Greg. I could be wrong. Maybe somebody in the Twitch chat could set us straight. But
Cameron Regal is actually in the Twitch chat and he's setting us straight right now. You don't see the scene at all, so it's just kind of weird. Okay. So you would only see the scene that in which Greg says, "Oh, it's you again." So who knows what Greg's talking about in that scenario? Let's forget that exists. Conquer dies at some point in the adventure.
I think canonically he's supposed to have died by that point. I think you're breaking the game otherwise. If you're good at it, if you're good at the Conquer's Bad Fur Day, you're not playing it the way the developers intended. If
you're able to get through that rotating fan blade swimming sequence without dying, then you're effectively God.
Yeah. So we see Conquer die, and he essentially meets a very literal conception of death, the Grim Reaper.
Right.
The man in black.
Psychopomp.
What?
A psychopomp. That's actually
psychopomp.
What. Yeah, a psychopomp is a. It's a Greek figure, and actually in the character database, that's the species that we have down for Greg on DK Vine. A psychopomp is a being, some sort of entity that shepherds other beings from life to death. Basically, in Greek mythology, it guides you along the river Styx, Charon.
Or Charon, as some people would call him. Charon,
yeah, whatever, however you want to pronounce that. CH. But yeah, Greg is one of those, effectively. That's what the pop culture image of the Grim Reaper is, essentially. It's a psychopomp.
I think our modern idea of how the Grim Reaper looks was popularized in medieval art. The cloak, skeletal figure. It's
doesn't that come from the Black Death?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they needed death to be a literal manifestation, and so that's how it was perceived. And a
couple years ago, when Janelle and I were in London, we went to the Museum of London, and there was an extensive exhibit on the Black Death. And I remember seeing a lot of artwork that sort of evoked Grim Reaper imagery. The whole thing was extraordinarily depressing.
What I really like about the show Lost, again, is the smoke monster, the Man in Black, was a literal Grim Reaper. And I like the idea that this whole notion, he was the Grim Reaper of the island, essentially, but this whole notion that humanity needed this death figure, and he was imprinted on the collective psyche of mankind through the white light of the source power of the island. So, yeah. So
that was a lot of gibberish.
No. We had this
No,
discussion.
it actually tracks if you know Lost mythos.
which most people checked out when they were in the cages in early season 3.
Yeah. I by the way, I love that canonically the Man in Black's name is Barry.
Is it?
Yeah. There was a Titus Welliver and the guy who played Jacob. I forget his name. I only know Titus Welliver. I know Titus Welliver because he was in that one episode of the X-Files with the green glowy bugs.
Oh my God,
and
he
I
was.
Yeah, he was one of the like park rangers or whatever. Anyway, Titus Welliver and Jacob were in this. We're in this Jimmy Kimmel bit that was actually canonical and written by the Lost writing staff and aired like as part of the promotion for the finale because, hey, we're all in one big happy Disney family.
Actually, I know what you're talking about. I think it was actually done for something like Paley Fest or something after the show ended. It was done like a year after the show ended.
Oh, okay. I thought that all that stuff was Jimmy Kimmel because I remember him relentlessly whoring Lost. But
no, I think this was like done for some sort of like TV event, and they they got the actors back, and it was just it basically riffed on like it put the two characters in an event in season 1 and just kind of made fun of how convoluted the show got. Yeah,
still canon. His name's Barry.
That's very well. Anyway, so yeah, well, the whole point is Greg the Grim Reaper is, by the way, named after Greg Mayles, obviously, because the spelling is the same, and I think it's just the two teams taking the piss out of each other in various ways. But Greg is a classical version of death. The only difference about Greg is he is comically short, stout, not very intimidating, and he also hates his job.
Right. Yeah. And that's very interesting and that's why I wanted to start with Conquer, because let's lay a foundation from an example that tells us the most about how the afterlife works. So let's parse a little bit of what he says. The powers that be are the ones that have sent Greg to basically do the reaping, and he is essentially an underling. He says, "I'm just doing my job. I don't even get paid very much." So he is clocking in, clocking out to reap whatever dies. But he refers to Conquer as one of these special cases, like cats that presumably get 9 lives, along with catfish, that we find out later in the game. So squirrels, there's a little bit of mythology that is constructed by the game itself to explain away why you have multiple lives, which is one of the kind of clever things that Conquer's Bad Fur Day does. The chocolate, the health items are anti-gravity chocolate as invented by the professor. They go out of their way to explain what you just accept as part of playing a video game. Right.
I mean, the whole game is just extremely meta in that regard. And so the whole point of meeting the Grim Reaper is we need to explain why Conquer essentially has extra lives. And so it is actually one of the few games where each death is canonical. It's not just, oh, well, you kind of have to fan wank away the idea that your character just died. It's no, it actually happened. And eventually, like the Retro Studios Donkey Kong Country games even worked in how the life balloons work, how you don't really die, but it brings you back into the events of the game. But here, yes, Conquer's heart literally stops. His soul literally leaves his body. He is dead. And So it was a joke. And granted, they worked into the mythology of cats, or at least the general wise tale that cats have 9 lives. And they applied that to squirrels, which I don't think has any actual rooting in real world mythology. That squirrels are, But squirrel tails are the key, essentially. If you have extra squirrel tails on hand, then you get to come back from the dead.
Right. So yeah, they established that not all deaths are, I guess, ended equal. Or not all lives are ended equal. So that might help us out a little bit. Might be a trump card for explaining away some of these inconsistencies. Perhaps Bottles the Mole is treated differently than Cooper, for example, when he dies, because they're different species.
Now, by a trump card, you mean the classiest, most luxurious card you could possibly play.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're gonna build a wall between life and death, and we're gonna make the Reapers pay for it,
et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so
et cetera.
it's only fucking April. It's gonna be such a long election season.
I didn't even want to do the voice. I'm just so sick of it.
I'm so tired of it. Yeah. Trump. Trump 2016 there. It's done. All right. But what I really like about this whole scene that you apparently can play through the whole game without seeing is that it much like Beetlejuice and even like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
That's one. That's one. You've got two more.
What do you mean?
Before he shows up.
Oh, well, I better watch it then. I don't want Michael Keaton to show up. So anyway, it treats death as a bureaucracy. It doesn't treat it as anything like that important. It's just for a character like Greg, it's a 9-to-5 run-of-the-mill job that he kind of hates. But
it's all about perspective, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
I mean, maybe it is
exactly.
this mystical experience, just not to him.
Right, that's what I mean, though. To like, if you take a step forward or like expand your way of thinking, then yeah, an possibly infinite amount of life forms die in the universe every day. So why the hell should it really matter in the long run? You're just crossing, especially if there's a world beyond ours, you're just crossing over into the next state of existence. So for Greg, he's essentially a glorified dog catcher.
Do you think he has to like interact with bacteria and like tardigrades? Every time.
Well, this is what I wanted to actually get into because, and this is going to force us to actually move on to another game. That I think we need to talk about next if we're really going to try to nail down how exactly this idea of grim reaping in the Donkey Kong universe works. Because, okay, so Greg, we know he's in charge of squirrels, of cats, of various woodland critters, small mammals, apparently. But I don't think he would be in charge of, microscopic life forms, but I do think there might be other Reapers in charge of those. Because in Grabbed by the Ghoulies, which is a classic Banjo-Kazooie spin-off by virtue of Royston the Goldfish appearing in the classroom of that game.
And we know that Banjo interacted with Conker in Diddy Kong Racing, so these are part of the same fabric of reality.
Right. For those of you who are new to the show, that is why we're discussing this in what's ostensibly called the Kongversation, and references Donkey Kong in the title.
We'll get to Wrinkly Kong, don't worry.
Don't worry, Wrinkly Kong, yeah, she's the most infamous example I think we have to discuss. But, in Grabbed by the Ghoulies, we're introduced to an entirely different Grim Reaper, who's just known as the Reaper. We never really get to know him well enough for him to give us his birth name.
Well, we know that he's affectionately referred to by James Thomas as, not to be confused with James Tyler, Junior.
Junior. So yeah, maybe reaping is just the family business for him. He wanted to get into music, as evidenced by his air guitar, but he unfortunately had to take up the mantle. But I believe, because in Grabbed by the Ghoulies, you play a human protagonist named Cooper and or Amber, depending on which portion of the game you're playing. And you mostly encounter humans or monstrous versions of humans. With some exceptions, there's imps, there's chickens, but for the most part, you're fighting like zombies and skeletons and former humans.
And Jesse and Clyde's
mutant humans, yeah.
Yeah.
So
thanks a lot, Dr. Crackpot.
We'll get into Dr. Crackpot. I feel like he's an important part of at least explaining away what we see in Ghoulies. But
sure.
Yeah, you encounter an entirely different Reaper in that game called the Reaper, and he, I believe, is the Reaper of humans.
I can see that. I think that perhaps Reapers, at least when we encounter Greg in Conker's Bad Fur Day, at least initially, kind of in his own otherworldly plane. There's sort of this cobbled floor, and there are these torches with blue lanterns. It all looks very eerie, very otherworldly. But then later on, we do see Greg just in Conker's normal world, trying to kill some catfish. Whereas Grabbed by the Ghoulies' death is in we only ever see him inside the mansion, interacting with what's actually going on. So I'm thinking that perhaps when the manifestation, the agent of death, is in the real world, their touch will kill anything. That's not necessarily their primary function, but they still have that power, which explains why you can run exploding worms and vampire chickens into death, and he'll still kill them.
Right, and I feel like that's an important understanding. We need to understand what is exactly the role of the Reaper, because, again, in that medieval art that was popularized around the time of the Black Death, obviously the Grim Reaper came to kill you. But I understand the Reaper as more a ferryman, like Charon/Charon of Greek myth, where he's not necessarily there to kill you. You can still die of a heart attack, or you get hit by a bus, or you get shot, or just of old age. But, and he's just there to help guide your soul if your soul gets lost along the way. I don't know.
So you don't think it's the sort of situation? I mean, I feel like some of the challenges that... well, maybe we should talk about... Maybe we'll save that for like a dedicated Ghoulies episode, but the challenges that Baron von Ghoul...
Ghoulies episodes, Chad. We've already had enough dedicated Ghoulies episodes. But anyway, continue.
You can never have enough Ghoulies. Baron von Ghoul sets up these challenges, and if you fail the challenge... out comes Junior, and he's looking for you. So I'm wondering if this is basically like what is it that he's doing? Does he work for the Baron, or is this? Perhaps if Cooper fails the challenge, then maybe the Baron starts pumping an invisible like carbon monoxide into the room, and that's visualized by death chasing you around, and it's just that's Cooper's time. It's not the fact that he touched you, it's the fact that you died because you were asphyxiated by invisible gases.
Well, that's an extremely convoluted way of looking at it.
What, you didn't think that as you played Grab by the Ghoulies?
I was like, oh, here comes the carbon monoxide. Babs Buff Brass really should have replaced those batteries in the detector that could have solved all these problems. No, I don't know. I feel like the Reaper naturally hangs out at Ghoulhaven because it's a nexus point of spiritual energy, and it's easy pickings for him. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And perhaps, later on in the episode, we'll get into why it is such a nexus point, because I don't think it's... I don't know that the mansion itself was originally that way, but perhaps some of the work that's being done there has opened a rift.
Definitely. I think it's some of the mad science that's gone on in Ghoulhaven inadvertently made it such a profound supernatural hotspot, kind of like the Temple of Zool in Ghostbusters, just...
Right.
Yeah, so...
Spook Central.
Right. Sorry, I was just trying to avoid any discussion or thoughts about the Ghostbusters reboot. I had to stop my brain for a second, just completely...
Yeah, you don't need to. you can just ignore the fact that it exists. That is perfectly valid...
I can try, but I went to see Batman v Superman the other week.
Batman v... Why don't they call it Batman versus VS? Calling it Batman v Superman sounds like it's going to be a legal drama.
Zack Snyder apparently explained that he thought Batman versus Superman sounded too harsh.
Okay, as opposed to the pounding imagery in every single scene. I mean, all right, whatever.
Anyway, I went to see Batman v Superman the other week, and that the Ghostbusters trailer played before it, and I was just like, well, this is just going to be a miserable experience from start to finish, isn't it? And because the Batman v Superman wasn't any good either.
Oh, no. Not any good at all? I've heard that at least Ben Affleck was good.
But Ben Affleck's good. That version of Batman is hyper violent and not really, I think, true to the character. But whatever.
I don't know. Batman can be a lot of things. I'm currently watching through the 1966 Batman. I think there's room in the canon for an extremely violent Batman.
Yeah, but when you want to hang your entire cinematic extended universe on a version of Batman, I think you want to get it as timeless as possible. But that's just my opinion.
I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what a timeless Batman is, because Batman is always evolving.
He's always evolving, but I think one of the core rules about Batman is he doesn't use guns.
Oh, does this Batman use guns?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not... Oh, okay, now that's pretty fundamental. Adam West would lecture him on that.
Yeah, he fucking blows up people from the Batmobile. Granted, Michael Keaton's Batman blew people up too, but that was a dark, like, surreal fairy tale take on Batman. Whereas I don't know. Anyway,
that's Keaton reference number 2. I hope you're keeping tally at home.
Oh fuck.
Don't worry, it wasn't a juice reference.
I know, but I still feel like it applies. I referenced him again one more time, and Michael Keaton's going to show up. So
we do not want Jeetleboost on the show.
We need to watch our references and make sure by the end of this episode we do not reference that man again. Okay.
So
he'll come and he'll take us away to the afterlife, Chad.
It's like Cobcock Day. All right. Let's talk about another pretty, probably one of the most common depictions of some afterlife in the Donkey Kong universe, ghosts. Ghosts appear constantly.
They don't appear as much as you would think. I mean, they have shown up from time to time.
They're always around. What are you talking about?
Well, if you count the cameo games with Booze, yeah, sure, yeah, Booze are always there. But I'm thinking more like in the actual like core series, they don't show up that often. It's not like Conker has ever fought Ghost.
I don't know. I think the audience at home could benefit from a little booze in this conversation.
Okay, what? Let's start back to Donkey Kong Country 2, which I think is the first actual appearance of Ghost in the entire Donkey Kong universe.
Mm-hmm. So we have the enemies, cloaks and cannons, which
cloaks and cackles.
Cackles. Sorry, I was reading the show notes like an idiot that can't think for himself, and it said cannons because Hyle's an idiot who can't write correctly.
Yeah. Sorry. I was thinking of me. I'm always thinking about those voluptuous, large, round stomachs on the supple purple flesh of cannons.
What you're saying is you have a vor fetish.
I would like to be eaten by cannons from off of Donkey Kong Country 2, yes. I would like to be warm inside their stomach. It sexually arouses me.
Mm-hmm.
What? You got a problem with that?
No, I don't. So, cackles are the terrifying skeletal ghosts from Haunted Hall, and then cloaks are the baddies that are essentially just floating cloaks, much like the haunted coats in Grabbed by the Ghoulies.
Right. It's the exact same type of spiritual phenomena. If you really want to get technical about it, they're just all cloaks are kind of possessed articles of clothing that these ghosts formerly wore in their lifetimes. They just don't have enough, I guess, energy to fully manifest.
Possibly, yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a deliberate decision. They just don't want to be seen. They're just they're more comfortable out of their own skin.
In like real world, I'm hesitant to call it like real world paranormal studies because I know it's a lot of bunk, but I'm not saying like we defer to the Ghost Adventures crew from off of the Travel Channel, but yeah, there are different categories of ghost or ghostly apparitions, and yeah, I mean, in some of them you only have partial apparitions where they're not fully formed, and actually a lot of this lore was then used to write Ghostbusters because they make reference to different types of apparitions or ghosts, so different classes of ghost. So I think cloaks and the haunted coats from Grabbed by the Ghoulies are definitely two of the same kind of apparition, but cackles are definitely fully formed, terrifying ghosts, and they actually have a skeletal appearance, so they incorporate some of their looks post-death in their appearance, which I find interesting.
Yeah, well, one of the common themes of that you see in the depictions of ghosts through pop culture is that they can kind of morph their appearance at will. Look no further. You mentioned that Ghostbusters kind of drew from a lot of this. The first ghost that they encounter in the library seemed like a friendly old lady, and then she turned into a terrifying Muppet monster. Perhaps Cackle is along those same conceptual lines, has decided to look as scary as possible when haunting Haunted Hall. He's also a librarian, presumably.
I wonder if that's how Iwata haunts Nintendo. His apparition is a friendly man, and then he turns into the Muppet from E3.
Oh, I don't think Iwata's haunting anything. I think he lived a fulfilled life and moved on into whatever his religious beliefs would allow.
I think he's micromanaging Nintendo to this day.
Do you think Iwata did a lot of micromanaging?
I don't know. It's just a funny visual. Just go with it.
All right, I'm fine with it.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the recently deceased. It was just a funny, heartwarming visual to have his Muppet ghost haunting Nintendo. It's comforting for me, okay?
Yeah, and it's strange that that game Kazai Watch is coming out all of a sudden.
Anyway, we also witnessed, I think, the first on-screen death in Donkey Kong Country 2, and then that character later came back as a ghost.
To whom are you referring?
What the fuck, man? Crow.
Okay. Good. So Crow, we only saw him, and that's confirmed that it's canon, that Crow dies in the course of the game, because in the character parade, we only see Creepy Crow.
And then in the Game Boy Advance version, we actually see his spirit leaving his body.
Right, you have murdered this crow, and he'll be back.
I think it's just an accident, like you broke his neck, hurtling that last egg into him, and, things happen in the course of battle. They didn't mean to kill him, just like they didn't mean to commit genocide at the end of the game. These things just happen.
Yeah, some of them are accidental, but we're not going to look too closely at them. Let's skip ahead to Banjo-Kazooie, which also has ghosts, especially in Mad Monster Mansion. Do you think that these are of a kind to the ghosts that we see in DKC2?
I mean, I guess these are the ghost of Gruntilda's minions. The grunt, not the gruntlings, but the purple dudes. I know
dudes.
Yeah, she has those purple dudes who are running around as well.
You talking about, you mean in Mumbo's Mountain?
Yeah.
The Grublins.
Grublins, yeah.
Are they Grublins? I think those are Grublins.
I know Ed Bryan said that the ghost appearance, weren't they essentially the trolls from Dream? He just reused them, reused their heads and made the ghost.
Perhaps I didn't connect that in the end. You're talking about the 5 facts about Banjo-Kazooie video that Rare put up. Yeah, I didn't make that connection. I didn't think that was what he was saying, but perhaps it was. Maybe I just misread it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. But
okay.
The ghosts are called teehees in Mad Monster Mansion, and they're actually very much like the ghosts. Most of the ghosts you see in Ghostbusters, they've got that Slimer-esque ectoplasmic kind of blobbiness to them, where like their heads have manifested, but the rest of their bodies are kind of this amorphous mist,
Right.
And,
yeah, there's also Napper, who is one of... he seems to be the same species as the Teehees. He's just
I think that's
much larger.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that ghosts can take naps, apparently. Apparently, you still have the desire to dream while you're dead.
Or maybe he's just really tired.
I mean, I don't know. As somebody who's an insomniac, I'm sure wherever my ghost will haunt, I will be taking naps on the floor as people try to get by me. So, but in Mad Monster Mansion, there's also Tumblar. And Tumblar is, I think he's just supposed to be some sort of possessed glass, I guess. I don't really know.
He does talk to you, though, and I think he's like a conduit between this world and the next.
Well, he serves as kind of the conduit for the Ouija board kind of esque floor that you have to solve the puzzle to get the jiggy underneath him. But he does seem to be a ghost. He's just more of a... It's more ambiguous exactly what the hell he is. Is he the ghost of a talking glass? Or I don't really know. Or is he... Because he says... He calls Banjo-Kazooie Solid One, so that would imply that he himself is some sort of transparency. So I don't know.
Yeah. Also in Mad Monster Mansion is Motsand, whom
Motsand,
you actually give an exorcism to.
Yeah. So it seems like because what's interesting here, and when you compare it to the ghost of Donkey Kong Country 2, it's that those ghosts seem to have almost kind of free range of movement. They could go wherever they pleased. Maybe they were haunting. Maybe they had to haunt particular areas of Crocodile Isle. It's never really explained, but we know Crow moved several miles, up the island to Gloomy Gulch. He wasn't stuck haunting the Gangplank Galleon, so I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with where you die. But with Motsand,
well, I think that the part of why Crow migrated is because when you fight Ghost Crow, he's also got an army of undead mini neckies. So I think that part of him relocating to Gloomy Gulch was to make sure that he had that backing army to be able to take on the Kongs a second time.
Perhaps, but I think with Motsand, he definitely seems trapped. Like he wants to be able to leave, and you kind of help him move on by solving his whatever and getting that fucking jiggy from him.
He's forever doomed to move left and right over that organ in the what we call the Satanic Church and play music in the same key as whatever is going on in the background, which does not work in Rare Replay, strangely enough.
Really?
Yeah. It plays the same note. I think that's actually not a Rare Replay bug. It's an XBLA port bug. Yeah. It kind of existed before Rare Replay, but on the N64, the note that Motsand plays is actually in the key of the dun 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 dun. But it's just the same note over and over when you play it on XBLA.
Interesting. Well, they screwed that up then.
Well.
No,
it's important texture to the life and strife and death of Motsand.
Oh, okay. I apologize. But anyway, my whole point is definitely seems to be. I don't know. What do you think is the key difference here between ghosts who can move around and ghosts who are bound to a particular place and location? I think, does it have to do with how much free will you have, or how cognizant you are of you being dead in the first place? Is it like you have to relearn how to have control over your surroundings? I don't really know.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like the ghosts in Mad Monster Mansion they all seem pretty self-aware. I think that what we're seeing in those cases are the ghosts that try and help Gruntilda's mission, or which is hindering Banjo and Kazooie, all seem to be able to go kind of wherever the hell they want. Whereas the ones that are friendlier to our heroes are the ones that are more restricted. So I think that perhaps Gruntilda herself has some dominion over death, or at least over the afterlife state, and is able to use some of her black magic to perhaps put a spell on them that prevents an anti-mobility spell, which is like the least elegant way I could have phrased that.
Yeah, and you could also, I guess you could also say, because Gruntilda is a very classic depiction of witchcraft, where she's a bride of Satan, burn her, haha. But I think that gives her that ability to, I don't know, maybe recruit spirits who are already in the afterlife to come back and have that range of movement. Whereas a lot of the friendlier ghosts are only kind of half aware they're dead, and they can't really move on yet until you fulfill whatever purpose they need fulfilled.
Right.
But I don't know. There's also the mums in the game. The
mummies from
Yeah. Gobi's Valley. Yeah, they're referred to as mums technically, but they are technically dead as well. They are corpses that are reanimated. I guess. Are they the first instance of reanimated corpses in the DKU? I believe so.
Okay, so yeah, possibly. Depends on maybe how you define the rock crocs from the first Donkey Kong Country, but I think that those are more that's just their normal living state, is that they can morph their bodies to look like rocks. So I don't think that there's any afterlife going on there. But
no, I think they're just rock monster. Maybe there are rocks that were in close proximity to the Kremlin source, and
it wasn't a rock; it was a rock monster.
Thank you for the B-52s reference. It's been a while.
Yeah.
We should talk through the whole show like this.
Let's do it, Hyle. It'll be our best episode in years.
Next April Fool's Day, we need to do a Fred Snyder from the B-52s episode, where we just talk like that the entire time. It'll be a 4-hour episode.
Rocco's Modern Life.
So yeah, the mums are reanimated corpses, and I find that interesting that spirits can essentially re-enter their body, even if it's decayed or mummified, and I don't know, and I guess resume their lives once led.
Yeah, well, mummies are essentially zombies with linen. So, we will see more of this sort of thing later on, and I think, obviously, we'll talk about where the zombies in Grab by the Ghoulies come from, but I think that there's we do need to spend some dedicated time talking about that, because there are 3 different versions of zombies in the DKU. Effectively, there's mummies, there's Conquer zombies, and there's Ghoulies zombies.
Right. So should we just move on to go back to the two Conquer and talk about the Conquer zombies next?
Sure.
Okay. Well, Conquer zombies, I don't know. Are they supernatural, or are they, I don't know, influenced by any sort of technology, or...
I feel like the proximity to Bacula's castle, or Count Concula, I think is his canonical name.
It's a hazy matter, that name.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you go to, you'll see that he's only ever referred to as Bacula in the chapter selection, but there's a gravestone for Count Concula in his actual courtyard behind the mansion.
Oh, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of the Kulas of Conk, hence Concula.
But it could
so
be,
I think that,
it could be like a Vlad Tepes kind of thing, where he was also known as Dracula. So what is his birth name? Is it Concula or is it Bacula? Because they're pretty damn similar.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe it was kind of after the fact he appropriated it. But at any rate, I think that those that he feeds upon, basically they are kind of in this state of unrest when they die, and perhaps that's where I think the zombies in Bad Fur Day come from. I feel like that's kind of confirmed, because the ones that you kill when he turns you into a bat then immediately come back as zombies when you're running around trying to get the keys to get out of the mansion.
Now, do you think that's the case? Because you put them in a meat grinder. I mean, I would think there'd be nothing left.
That's a fair point. How can I talk my way out of this one? And there's really no way to do it.
Plus, they seem pretty decayed at that point, so it's not like they're that fresh. I mean, you could say the meat grinder mutilated them, but they would have to crawl out of the vat of like goop. I don't know.
Yeah. How about this then? Perhaps it's a. Perhaps. Okay, so maybe it's not those exact characters that you turned into a paste. But yeah, it's not like their body reconstituted, but only just so. You're good enough to become flesh and blood, but we can't get that eyeball back in its socket.
Granted, I mean,
no.
if they did become zombies in the meat grinder, you wouldn't have much to worry about because it would be zombie guts. It would just be, that's slightly disconcerting, but luckily it's in that vat, and I'll never have to worry about it.
Yeah, and there'd be no blood to kind of help hold everything together because he drank all of it. It would just be like this slurry of dry material.
That's one of my biggest issues with things like The Walking Dead that portray like a zombie apocalypse like 3 years in. It's like, how are there still zombies? There would be no blood left. They would be dried husk, and the elements themselves would pretty much wipe them away to nothing.
No, there's plenty of moisture in Georgia. I think that part's okay. There are plenty of other things to take issue with in The Walking Dead.
Okay. I find the logic of perma zombies to be a key fallacy in the lore. I'm sorry.
Oh, see, I find it to be a key fallacy in the concept of storytelling.
Well, they could be two things, Chad. It can be two things.
Okay. ¿Por qué no los dos? So anyway, how about this? What if Bacula Concula's castle is kind of a poltergeist scenario where it's the house itself, that area that is at unrest, and because as I said, there's a headstone in the backyard that has Concula's name on it. I think we could reasonably assume that there is a graveyard out there that could have those zombies, and that we know that there's a graveyard down past the impractical, winding, worm-filled road.
My favorite Paul McCartney song, by the way.
The impractical, worm-filled road leads you to the threshold. No, I think that perhaps it's just whereas in Poltergeist that was an Indian burial ground, so I'm not sure quite what it is that's been disrupted to create this rift, but there's something going on there. I don't know. I'm sort of tilting at windmills here. Do you have any ideas?
Well, okay, here's my thing, though. It might be supernatural in nature, these zombies coming back, but I think zombies have to be very, very rare in the DKU because it's not something you often see.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at where Bacula or Concula's castle is, and it's in very close proximity to the Panther King's castle, which we know Crackpot has a lab there. Or not Crackpot, the Professor von Cripplespack. I hate saying that name, knowing how offensive it is now.
I was wondering if you would actually say it.
On Facebook, I've just taken to calling him Zipperfessor because I feel bad about the horribly un-PC name now.
Yeah, and it's not even funny. It's not like, politically incorrect for good comedic reasons. It's just kind of mean.
It's kind of mean-spirited, right? It's a relic of 2001 and the kind of humor Conker dealt with. But anyway.
Oh, wait, no. Was he called Von Cripplespack in CBFD? I thought that was a Live and Reloaded thing.
I thought he was called... I don't know. I don't know where the Cripplespack name first originated from. If it was in the ancillary materials. It's how I've known him for so long, though, that... my brain has retroactively inserted that back in 2001. If it actually wasn't. That's my excuse. Don't blame me. But anyway, I've kind of hand-waved the zombies away from Bad Fur Day as kind of runoff from the Professor's lab. Maybe like
okay,
maybe like the stuff he used to create teddies, excess chemicals or whatnot, reanimated some of the bodies in the cemetery.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I can see that. I don't know. I'm trying to think back to the geography of what we see, like on top of the barn in CBFD. Were those buildings really actually close together? I don't recall that.
Yeah. They're virtually like right next to each other. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I guess perspective might play tricks, but yeah.
Well,
okay.
Yeah. But I mean, regardless, it's not like zombies are something that happens every day in the DKU. There needs to be some sort of trigger to make them happen, whether that trigger is supernatural or the trigger is through mad science.
Ooh.
And by the way, it should be also pointed out that there are vampires in the DKU as well, and that is also a form of life after death. But I don't know if you could really say vampires it's life after death. It's just a state of undeath, a state of
immortality.
Yeah, a vampire, like, I don't think you could actually make the case that they're dead so much as in a altered state that keeps them from dying.
Right, and I think that, there's this sort of common idea that, what you have to have the possibility of death in order for you to live, and so because there was actually Janelle and I watched a really good movie recently that was the crux of the argument. I think it might have been the Studio Ghibli film Tales from Earthsea. I want to say that was it. But yeah, basically the idea that if you can't die, you can't truly live. So that's why vampires are so screwed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we know there's werewolves too, but I would also argue. Some people try to argue werewolves are the undead, and no, they're just people who turn into wolves. But we know from Bacula's gallery that one of Conker's ancestors was a werewolf. So,
okay.
So there's all sorts of like legitimate supernatural monsters are true in the DKU. It just they are few and far between. But
oh yeah, and then grabbed by the ghoulies, of course, you've got Medusas, and you've got we get into Greek lore, we get into all over the place. There are zombies though. You mentioned the zombies being created through like scientific means.
Yes.
Let's talk about Banjo-Tooie before we get into Grabbed by the Ghoulies, because King Jingling himself becomes zombified through scientific means.
Well, is it scientific means?
Maybe it's a combination.
Yeah, let's argue the case of what happens to King Jingling, because he is I guess actually before Bad Fur Day, he is the first zombie we saw in the Donkey Kong universe. So he beat Bad Fur Day by about 4 months.
Well, if you're not counting the mums from Banjo-Kazooie.
Right. I mean, there's a thin line between mummies and zombies, but it exists nonetheless. So,
right.
Let's just defer to popular wisdom, shall we?
Sure.
King Jingling became a zombie after the BOB sucked the life force out of him, but not all the life force. It left just a little bit, I guess, for him to roam around his throne room as a quote unquote zombie.
Yeah, poor Toots got the raw end of that deal.
Well, Toots was just this like charred little husk that still had blinking eyes, so I don't know.
Right.
I'm not really sure what you could classify Toots as during that metamorphoses, but yeah, Jingling, he could hurt you running into him. It basically made him an enemy by the game mechanics, but he wasn't actually trying to eat your flesh or anything, as the zombies in Bad Fur Day did.
Yeah, he was just trying to talk about his friends, all the bosses in the game.
Yeah. So what do you think happened to Jingling in that scenario?
So yeah, let's talk about the Bob, the big O blaster. I feel like it's not entirely scientific, but because of course it was constructed by the Winky Bunyan sisters,
right?
Mingella and Blobelda,
a coven of evil witches.
Right, but it does look like machinery. So I'm thinking that perhaps they got Klungo. Well, hang on. It couldn't have been Klungo because Klungo is a mad scientist. He built the the cuteness, the beauty sucking machine in Banjo-Kazooie.
I would also argue Klungo is perhaps a bit of a warlock. I mean, he has the same green skin, the same skin tone as the Winky Bunyan sisters. I think they're all. I think Klungo focuses more on mad science, but he's also a magic practitioner. But I feel like the Winky Bunyan sisters focus more on mad science or more on witchcraft, but they also keep a thumb in mad science as well. So I think it's just a matter of degrees.
Sure. So what I think the Big O Blaster is, it's a machine that allows the witch sisters to channel their bad juju and not the totem from Momo's Mountain.
He's the best juju.
He is, until you destroy him and then have no way of getting that honeycomb piece.
He'll come back if you exit the world.
Yeah, but who wants to do that? We're here to 100%. I think that they can channel their magic through this device to make it much more powerful and concentrated and long range than it otherwise would be. I mean, they can effectively touch the entire Isle of Hags. I think that's what they're doing. So yeah, it probably is black magic that's sucking the life force out of Jingaling. But hey, to your point, maybe we shouldn't even be talking about him. He appears zombified, but if he does have a little bit of life in him, he's still alive. He's not the undead.
Right. I think he just had enough brain activity going on that his soul couldn't leave his body, but he also wasn't really in control of his actions. If that's the case you can make. I mean, honestly, it's, impossible to say, but I don't even think the Banjo-Tooie team would know for sure what the fuck they were doing. But I think that's a good explanation as any.
Sure. You're good.
No, I'm good. I was gonna say, I mean, what is life force anyway? It's a made up concept anyway. So sure.
Well, George Lucas tried to explain it once to his detriment. So there is one character in the Donkey Kong universe that we know dead is dead. Wrinkly Kong.
Wrinkly Kong, yeah, she's a whole lot of dead.
She died sometime since Donkey Kong Country 3.
Right. I've always slotted her death in shortly after Mario Golf Game Boy Color.
Well, obviously. I mean, come on.
I mean, I'm sure it would have come up, in one of the cameo games. Like, if she died before Mario Party, I'm sure Donkey Kong would have had some dialogue in that game that said, "Excuse me, I know I need to be concentrating on Tug of War, but I'm having an emotional week. My mom just died."
Yeah, I think that the Mario Kart 64 kart racing tournament was really more of a coping mechanism for Donkey Kong.
But we could surmise. I mean, there's really nothing that's been established in game, but I think we can surmise, given that Wrinkly Kong's ghost is often seen wearing kind of pajamas, like a nightcap and everything, that she died of natural causes in bed, surrounded by loved ones.
Wait, pajamas? Where are you getting that?
She's wearing pajamas, like in her Payon design onwards.
Oh, in that one. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of like the Donkey Kong 64 one where she's just got a kind of a squiggly body.
No. Yeah, she actually died cosplaying as the human centipede. It was very sad.
Oh, God. Cranky was into it, though.
He was. Cranky is definitely into some analingus. So anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we'll get into that in our next episode.
No, we won't.
But I think Wrinkly died of natural cause. Now, what are natural causes? Was she sick? What was she sick from? I don't think she just died because she was old. I mean,
Yeah, no one dies from old age. That's insane.
Well, I mean, but given that, Cranky is the same age as... Like, people just don't die because, I'm old, my body's going to stop working now. There's always a reason why they die. Yes, age can be is a contributing factor, of course, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's splitting hairs, I know, but it's like you die because you're old is a very simple way of looking at things.
Well, okay, you die because your cellular structure is only capable of maintaining cohesion until about age 98 or so. Like, I don't know. What do you...
I hope that's what's on Wrinkly Kong's death certificate, actually.
And then you turn into goop because your cells no longer have covalent bonds.
But anyway, so Wrinkly died sometime after Donkey Kong, Land 3. She says Country 3, but she was old and senile. She doesn't know what's going on.
Right, yeah. She can't remember the stopwatch trials.
I mean, I'm really worried about my own parents because when they stop remembering their handheld adventures, I know I'm going to have to put them down.
Put them down?
That's what you do to your parents, right?
Stray cats?
You take them to the vet. And
yeah.
So, anyway, what I find amusing about Wrinkly Kong is she dies. And then she immediately comes back to age you as some sort of like vision as your island is being threatened to go explodey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she only, later on in the game, as you say, when she has her nightcap version, she's able to sort of go wherever she wants, and in fact becomes playable in Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. But before that, in DK64, she seems tethered to these doorways in the world entrance, the world entrances throughout the game.
And this actually ties into my earlier argument, if you will, that a ghost or a spirit doesn't really have mastery over their abilities immediately after they die. So when Wrinkly died, she had to come back through these ghost doors. I'm not really sure what these doors are supposed to be, but it's really like Wrinkly is not actually haunting any of the areas in Donkey Kong 64. You're communicating with her through a gateway or at least a spiritual channel, but she's actually still in the afterlife. At least that's what I'm interpreting it as. Later,
so she's kind of like Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis and
Nope. She's like Alec Baldwin in post 30 Rock. Her career is dead, but she still hangs around and makes weird cameo appearances.
Does he do anything anymore, Baldwin?
I think he's too much of an angry asshole to get steady with.
No one wanted me to be mayor of New York, so I'm just going to sit out life.
He doesn't even do those Capital One commercials anymore.
They wouldn't have me.
Is that Alec Baldwin or Batman?
Both. Alec Baldwin is Will Arnett, is Batman. In the Lego movie.
I'm actually looking forward to the Lego Batman. It should be better than Batman v Superman, at least.
It almost has to be at this point, especially if Chris Miller and Phil Lord are doing it.
Yeah, I know. You haven't seen Batman v Superman, though. Maybe you would love it, Chad. Maybe.
I am documented as a Zack Snyder fanboy, after all.
You've got Sucker Punch tattooed on your ass.
Oh my god, and Ving Rhames just made Dawn of the Dead. Actually, Dawn of the Dead was pretty good, the remake. I'll give it that. That was probably his best movie. He started at the top of his career. I think Zack Snyder is pulling a Shyamalan.
The thing is, Zack Snyder didn't write Dawn of the Dead either, though. He just directed it, so... Oh,
okay, I didn't realize that.
I think the more control a Zack Snyder has, the worse it gets. Did you know that apparently the Watchmen opening credits were it was a secondhand unit? Zack Snyder didn't even make those.
Oh, really? The times they're a-changin'? The best part of the whole movie?
The best part of Watchmen, the part that... We went to see Watchmen together in Los Angeles, and after the movie, we were like, yeah, those opening credits were really great.
And it was downhill from there, baby.
But the opening
I loved this. I love the subtle imagery of the Night Owl's ship bursting fire out of the front as soon as he ejaculates.
Yeah, I know. I like that. Oh, I get it. Because he's ejaculating too.
Jesus Christ.
Hallelujah.
Zack Snyder. Oh God, you're right. It was set to that, wasn't it? Wow. Oh,
anyway,
what a mess. Yeah.
Where were we?
I don't know. Well, let's take some calls actually.
Okay.
Because we got a lot to get to. We need to talk about some of the weirder one-offs like potentially Andros, and then get back around to Crackpot. But we got some calls.
Good day, lads. Scrap 69 here. How's it going, eh?
I wish I was dead.
Quick and short question here for you lads today. Just have to wonder, if you lads were born irresistible to the ladies, so much so that you were getting action every night, even as a teenager, do you reckon that you lads would have an interest in the DKU and Donkey Kong, as well as the DKY?
This is not on topic.
So, let me know. Gotta turn this off. See you lads.
Not even close to relevant, but thanks for the call, Scraps. There's actually another call. It's I think the caller ID is from the same place. He uses Skype, so it could be the Beach House Gang. But let's roll the dice.
Good day, lads. Again, Scrap 69 here. Just wanted to end that call from the previous times and say that Bottle should have stayed dead. He had a good way out, and that was to stay dead. But instead, Banjo-Kazooie brought him back into the eternal torture that is their lives. And the cycle goes over and over again. The cycle never stops. Groundhog Day is eternal in the DKU, and everyone will suffer. All right, let me know what you reckon of my theory, eh? Yeah, that's about it. Have a good one, lads.
Was that a theory? Thank you for the calls, Scraps.
Well, I think his theory about us getting laid in high school.
Yeah,
I don't think he had anything on topic to contribute. He really just wanted to get that question in before a call sack episode.
Yeah, and he wanted to then get us talking about Bill Murray movies, because Ghostbusters conversation wasn't heavy enough.
Right.
I don't think that there's anything. I don't think that Bottles coming back from the dead as a ghost. Well, I don't think Bottles' ghostly version is like, necessarily a cyclical thing. I think that's just a state change and then a state change back.
I'm glad he brought up Bottles though, because we do need to mention Bottles.
Sure.
And for your first question, sure, Scraps. If we were getting laid all the time in high school, there'd be no DK Vine. So isn't it a good thing we weren't?
I don't know about that though, because I think that we both kind of came to the Donkey Kong universe before we hit puberty. So perhaps there's still, even if we were, football players or whatever. I stereotypically assume football players are the only people who got laid in high school. Even if we were of that ilk, I think that there still would have been some residual Donkey Kong universe momentum from childhood.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We still would have had a fondness for the games. Whether we would have channeled all that energy into a website is a different matter entirely. But as far as Bottles goes, Bottles is also another on-screen death we saw. Unlike Wrinkly Kong, we saw his death. And, of course, he came back from the dead, but it's still an important moment because Bottles got blown up, and we actually saw his spirit leaving his body. And his spirit kind of lingered at the site of his death. He never moved. He never, journeyed onward. He stayed in Spiral Mountain in front of the charred remains of his own corpse.
Well, yeah, but he said when you talk to him repeatedly, doesn't he say something like he's sticking around to make sure that nobody feasts on his body, like no worms come in?
Sure. But what I find interesting is how come Greg didn't show up to ferry his soul away?
Perhaps that's not how moles work. or perhaps it's because of the way that he died. So, unlike King Jingling, who turned into a near-death zomboid, Bottles just was the result of an explosion. He was not sucked by the big O blaster, but they still were able to fix his state of death in the same way that they fixed Jingling by blowing life back into him.
Well, I think Bottles, it was a sudden death, and it was the result of much turmoil and violence. So I think in those cases, when you have a lot of spiritual turbulence and when you die, you can kind of, you're too volatile to take away by somebody like Greg or the Reaper. You're kind of stuck in this reality until you can kind of work through your shit. So, which is why some of those ghosts you met in Mad Monster Mansion couldn't move on until Banjo-Kazooie helped them, while other ghosts, like the Teehee serving Gruntilda, may have come back after the fact through the use of black magic.
Gotcha. Okay.
And remember, Wrinkly Kong, if you are talking to her through doorways, she's actually already moved on to the afterlife. She's willingly trying to come back, though, to aid you in what is your biggest collectathon ever. So
right. She just wishes there was a color of bananas for her.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so where to next, Chad? Where we've talked about bottles now. We've taken Scrap Skull. Where do you want to go?
We've done everything conceivable. Let's meander a bit into the Lilat system.
Oh, okay. For the Dinosaur Planet series, right? Which is what we're calling the relevant Star Fox games we cover on DK Vine. Ostensibly Star Fox Adventures and the follow-up games that Nintendo made. It still had some story elements from that game.
Yes, and while they were a long time ago in I won't say galaxy, in a star system far, far away, Lilat might be a star in the Milky Way galaxy. We have not charted anywhere close to every star in the Milky Way. There are billions of them. Perhaps, because it is still in our reality, we're not talking about like going through a portal into the mushroom universe. I think that the same general rules should still apply. Same physics, same rules. I think that makes sense. That tracks. As long as death is not an Earth-specific construct, and I don't think it is, then it should be the same.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple key things we can look at. One of the more obvious ones would be Andros, but I don't know that Andros himself ever actually died. I think he's more along the lines of Voldemort in the Harry Potter series, where he, even when it seems like he was destroyed, he's still this like this bad this malevolent spirit that needs something to attach itself onto, and if it's not the back of Professor Quirrell's head, it's a Krazoa spirit.
Okay. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, so I'm going to take your word for it. That was all a bunch of gibberish to me, so I'm going to take your word for it.
Even the Krazoa part.
I was thinking more like Sauron from off of Lord of the Rings, where he is a guy who dies, but he comes back as a ghost and builds his power through various magic totems until he re-manifests.
Okay, yeah, it could really be either one of those, and perhaps that's a way to think of Voldemort as well, because there's a point at which he is kind of a ghost, like an apparition kind of figure, immediately following his attack on the Potters. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of overlap between Sauron and Voldemort, and potentially Andros.
Right. So we should explain, because a lot of people don't know the plot to Star Fox Adventures, or at least don't understand it because it is kind of vague. Essentially,
it's a mess.
Well, it's not a mess. It's beautiful, and it's like the plot to Lost, though. There's so many little moving bits and pieces and things that aren't referenced again that you really need to be paying attention and be taking notes and have a mind for this kind of bullshit. Otherwise, you're gonna say, they didn't resolve anything. That didn't make any sense. They were dead the entire time. What I gather from Star Fox Adventures is that the ghost of Andros, or the uncorporeal spirit, whatever, is influencing events on Soria, aka Dinosaur Planet. He's causing this Sharp Claw uprising and influencing General Scales. Also, he can harness the powers of the Krazoa spirits, which if properly channeled, can reconstitute a body for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think before the events of the game, he was responsible for some kind of genocide on Crystal's home planet, Serenia.
Yeah.
And that's why when you play through the prologue bit in the Krazoa Temple, at the end, there's a kind of a POV of like a predator vision, sort of this like heat map thing.
Right.
And she looks over at him and says, "It's you." She recognizes Andros, and of course you don't know that that's Andros until the very end of the game. But yeah, I think Andros is using these Krazoa spirits to be the vehicle that he can use to come back. So he needs to put crystal in a crystal, and he needs all of the Krazoa spirits to come back to the Krazoa Temple, and they are scattered across the planet that's broken apart. So basically the whole game is a con to get Fox to reawaken Andros.
Right, exactly. And I guess Crystal's home planet was like a dry run for him. I don't know if it has a similar like structure of ancient spirits that and force point temples and whatnot, but there does seem to be some sort of connection between Saria and Crystal's planet. So who knows? It's I don't know. It should be pointed out that Krazoa seem to be the former inhabitants of Dinosaur Planet. They're this ancient civilization that were there before the dinosaurs, and they died off, but their spirits still linger and still have this influence on the planet. Oh, okay.
You want to know did you read any of the leaked Dinosaur Planet documents before it was converted to Star Fox Adventures?
Yeah, a lot of that was simplified though by the time Star Fox Adventures was realized because I mean,
I don't think it's necessarily canon, but perhaps the parts that don't contradict could provide some context.
Perhaps,
but basically in a nutshell, there would be a big twist at the end. There was this war between the Kaminoans, I think, that basically the dragon that you fight toward the end, Dracor. He's one of these. I think they're called Kaminoans, but they were at war with the Krazoa, and the twist is that the Krazoas were actually the bad ones. So they were kind of able to cleanly slot Andros in place of the Krazoa, and that was the big twist.
Right, they kind of exonerated the Krazoa in the final plot of the game because they were just the unwilling conduits that Andros used.
Right.
But it's kind of the same principles we've seen back on Earth. You know, Andros died a horrible death, and he was kind of stuck in this state of he couldn't move on because he was filled with rage or whatever. And the only difference is Andros had the cunning to actually claw his way back from the dead, whereas other characters. We haven't seen that ability. Yeah, he was able to come up with this ridiculously convoluted con. And granted, I mean, he had the power of the magic of Saria and whatnot. So whatever.
Yeah.
But
and he's like a hyper intelligent mad scientist. I mean, so much so that in a lot of the games in which you fight him, his final form is a giant brain.
Right. So. With Bottles, for example, I don't think he's so intelligent that he could figure out a way to bring himself back from the dead. Luckily, there was a Deus Ex Machina just waiting for him. But, I don't think that contradicts anything. It's a little bit more fantasy-esque than we see in the DKU, but it works. Actually, there is one case of a character kind of, I don't know, manipulating events between life and death, and that's Gruntilda.
Yeah.
Because in Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge, she is actually trapped underneath this boulder, and the first attempt to get out of it, she decides she's going to actually give up trying to get out from underneath the boulder, at least bodily. She actually removes her spirit from her own body and places it in a new mechanical form. So essentially she's killing her former body and taking on this new form, but she's showing some control over where her spirit is projected.
She's haunting a robot.
She's essentially haunting a robot in the game, and I didn't think about it before, but could that be why she's so decomposed in Banjo-Tooie? Because she spent all that time outside of her own body. She was functionally dead in the ground.
I think that, perhaps, but I just assumed that she's decomposed in Banjo-Tooie because it's been 2 years.
Right, but I mean, she's using magic to keep herself alive, obviously, so I don't know. But I mean, that could be one reason why she's also a skeleton lady by the time Banjo-Tooie rolls around, because she did essentially kill herself in Grunty's Revenge, at least for a brief window of time.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Also, I can't remember. It's been so long since I played Grunty's Revenge. I can't remember if the events in that game were wiped or not. Did it actually? They were not.
Happened,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I think she. I don't know if there's a cause and effect between her appearance, but she made the conscious decision to leave her body.
By the way, when I was doing art for this episode, the YouTube art, it should be pointed out that both Chad and I realized it looks like Grunty's spirit form. They used art assets from Wrinkly Kong's Ghost to make spirit Grunty.
Right. Yeah. Check this out on YouTube or on SoundCloud so you can see the artwork. It has to be. You look at it and it's color shifted a little, but Grunty, the bottom half of Grunty is the bottom half of Wrinkly's Ghost. Which is funny because on DK Vine, when we first learned, DK Vine has been around since 1999. So we were there for all of the promotion of Banjo-Tooie. And we learned that Bottles died in the intro before we actually saw it. So I whipped up some concept art of that event and I used Bottles' head on Wrinkly Kong's ghost body. So I was kind of accidentally ripping off later laziness from Rare themselves.
It's not laziness, Chad. It's in-universe continuity. Come on.
Oh, that's how Donkey Kong Universe ghosts look, except Bottles.
Yeah. Of course, I think Bottles look differently just because they play in the Devil Bottles mode as well, and that kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, we would have had if that were canon, we would have a lot more to talk about.
We would, but I guess we can wrap up by going back to Ghoulhaven Hall, and I want to talk about Dr. Crackpot finally, and because that is an example of, I think, science manipulating the afterlife.
Right. And that's kind of where I think Ghoulhaven Hall itself, as we sort of alluded to earlier, gets all of its poltergeisty vibes from is because of the work that Crackpot's been doing.
Yeah. And he has the zombies. He has man-made zombies in the game. And they seem to be like corpses he just is able to uncover. Like, he's got the zombie pirates, which I assume those are pirates that sank off the shore of Ghoulhaven Hall, and their corpses were just underwater, and he fished them out. There's the mummies that you do. If you study Ghoulhaven Hall, you know that the Baron von Ghoul is a collector from of all sorts, and he's actually got these mummies he stole from ancient Egypt, because he's got their sarcophagi in a storage room. And so you've got reanimated mummies, you've got all sorts of undead creatures. There's vampires in the game. They're the big-breasted vampires that sexually assault Cooper.
Right. Hilarious, though.
Look, sexual assault is never funny. But it isn't grabbed by the ghoulies.
Right.
So, yeah, a lot of man-made undead creatures. But it should be also pointed out that there are actual ghosts in Ghoulhaven Hall as well. And I don't know if you could say those ghosts were the result of Dr. Crackpot or not.
When you say ghost, do you mean the kind of the spooky scare push button sections?
Yeah, just the ones that pop out from windows or other hiding places that scare Cooper.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I couldn't remember what the in-game term was for that.
Well, there's the ones that actually shock you, and then there's the ones that you can
toxic
escape.
shock syndrome. Maybe no, that's not what that is.
There's the ones that you can escape the radius of that don't stop the game.
Right. Yeah. And all of those are ghosts, ghostly at least, including Gwyneth Von Ghoul.
Right. So the what we now know is the Baron's wife is actually a ghost that haunts Schoolhaven Hall. And my question is, were those ghosts conjured by Crackpot, or was the supernatural turbulence he was whipping up by making these undead creatures the channel that the ghosts were using to haunt Schoolhaven?
Right. I mean, perhaps Gwyneth's death drove the Baron into this psychosis that, like, he was trying to figure out how to get his dead wife back, so he hired Crackpot and basically funded this mad scientist's work, and Crackpot went off the reservation a little bit, and the Baron was so psychotic by that point, driven mad by his own grief, that he didn't mind all that much. He thought it was delightful. By
the way, I like that was also our theory why Cranky took up science, or when Donkey Kong 64 was about to come out. We were like, well, why is Cranky now a scientist? He was trying to bring Wrinkly Kong back from the dead.
Right. Yeah. And allow Donkey Kong to pull levers.
Right. Those were really the two motivating factors. He was really just pissed off his son couldn't pull those levers.
Yeah. Well, how else was he supposed to play this arcade game that he spent all that time making?
He shouldn't have made it lever controlled, though. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's interesting that there is this intersection in the DKU between science and the supernatural. Like, it's not mutually exclusive. Like, there is a science behind all of this. It's just this great unknown science to most of us. Right.
Yeah, we don't know, like, the physical mechanisms that allow these doors to be opened and these undead creatures to be created, but at least we can trust that because it happens in the world of the game, that those doorways can be opened.
So, overarching conclusions here. What do you think? Like, living in the Donkey Kong universe, you know that there's something after death. I mean, Donkey Kong interacts with his mom/grandmother all the time. So, is death robbed of all of its meaning, or is it still this profound thing that we all are affected by? How does this fundamentally change the nature of the Donkey Kong universe, or at least living in it?
I think that, well, that's a good question. Like, is the profundity lost? I would say the nature of death as we understand it as mortal beings, we have no idea what's beyond that door, if anything. I mean, personally, I think that perhaps as you're dying, your neurons start firing off and time dilates, and you might experience some kind of afterlife sensation before all the electricity disappears from your brain. But I don't think there's any kind of thing out there. But that's obviously not the case in the DKU, so let's operate on those terms. I think that perhaps the experience of death, this profound thing, is elective. The fact that we have characters that come back either because they're at unrest or because they want to do good works for those that they care about, or because they're bottles, is entirely up to those. Well, sometimes it's not up to them, but in the cases where they're not being shackled to our reality, I think that it's really up to them. And if they want to disappear, a la, what Matsand eventually is able to do, then they can. But I mean, Wrinkly Kong, maybe I think she just likes spending more time with her, not ex-husband. I guess her. Yeah, what do you call it? What is their relationship? How can we label that? Wrinkly and Cranky.
Cranky Kong is her widow.
I guess so. Yeah, he's a widower. Okay, so her and her widower, she just wants to spend more time with him, and that's completely up to her. Maybe there would be a point in time in which like Cranky dies, and they both want to shuffle off this mortal coil.
That really must make it awkward for Cranky if he ever wants to remarry, knowing his other wife could show up at any moment.
That's true. Yeah, I wonder if they have sort of like a visitation schedule.
I could make so many jokes about ectoplasm and that being an effective lube, but I'm not going to because I want to keep the conversation.
Well, you kind of just did. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I think it's also interesting, like, how does this affect religion in the DKU? Because if, like, I think religion would just collapse eventually. If anybody could, if you knew, like, anybody could be in the afterlife and come back or whatnot, then what's the point of giving yourself to this blind faith that you know that it ultimately doesn't matter because we're all ghosts in the end, you know? Like, yeah, I couldn't see, like, Catholicism really catching on in the DKU. Which
Catholicism is all about ghosts. What are you talking about?
Well, no. But I mean, like, there'd be no point because you already know that there's life after death, and it's not necessarily tied to this fundamental faith. And plus, then I'm sure the Kongs probably saw the movie Spotlight and decided, I don't want to get molested by a priest. And oh wait, Chad, that was the third Michael Keaton reference. I conjured Michael Keaton!
Once upon a time, in the town of Medford, there lived a man named Jack Frost.
Happy holidays! You guys are great!
Are all musicians really flaky?
Yeah.
He had a beautiful wife and a loving son, but his job kept him away from home.
I brought you this.
You have harmonicas?
I got that the morning you were born. When you play that, no matter where I am, I can hear it.
Then one night, something happened. Something terrible.
It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I miss him too. I miss him too.
That turned into something wonderful.
I'm home. Charlie, it's me, it's Dad. What?
So I'm supposed to believe that you're my dad?
You were the one who played on the magic harmonica.
I thought you made that up!
So did I.
Just hear those selected dance. Get up!
Nah, I don't think so.
Dad's the snowman.
Honey. Charlie's run away with the snowman. Really?
What's the snowman look like? 3 bowls, 2 stick arms. Hey, that's my branch! Stocky, well-built. Shredding! Oh! Hey, I slimmed down. Whoa! Thanks for giving me a second chance to be your dad.
Warner Brothers is proud to present Michael Keaton
I'm a frozen freak of nature.
and Kelly Preston
Freeze, mister.
She's obviously not talking to me.
in the story of a man who got a second chance to be the world's coolest dad,
As long as you hold someone in your heart, you can never lose them.
Jack Frost.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.